announced Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls will both be released for next-gen consoles for, I guess that's PS4.
Right.
And then next-gen console. And then The Last of...
exclusives.
Yes,
Get it?
they are. And then The Last of Us 2 is officially announced, which there have been rumors about for quite a while.
But the fun thing about that is that they've said, yes, there's another thing coming, but we don't know what it is yet. It could be, because they're still kind of kicking around prototypes of ideas. And Neil Druckmann got kicked over to the Uncharted 4 project when everybody bailed on it at once.
Yeah.
And so apparently they haven't even really started on it.
Yeah. But
it's a thing that's going to happen, I think that I could fill out an entire episode with potential things that I would like to see. I want another game in that universe, but I like Joel and Ellie's story being contained and that being the first one. And then just seeing where they can go with
I want it completely separate.
Yeah.
I want it like Fallout, where Fallout 3 is in one place, and then Fallout 4 is in another place. Fallout New Vegas is in New Vegas.
Yeah.
Make them different locations, different characters. If I hear about the actions of another character, that's cool.
Yeah.
But that's all I need. So welcome to This Week in Our Collective Heads. There's a lot of interesting things going on having to do with that, in my opinion. We have essentially The Last of Us and Heavy Rain are both very dependent on their actors. And voice acting has gone from it being very basic, no matter how great the actor is, but very much like a very basic cartoon animation voice actor, to now we're doing motion capture. Well, we're doing facial capture. We're doing all of this that makes it more like doing a movie. Yeah. But doing a longer movie.
I really feel like for me at least, the first one that I remember having a considerable amount of voice acting was Metal Gear Solid on PlayStation.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And all you had was, you had the little picture of them talking, and that was it. Like there wasn't. I mean, and honestly, going back and listening to those, it's corny. It's not good. No. It's very.
We love you, David Hayter.
Yeah.
Same thing with the original. Actually, the first two Resident Evil games. Mm-hmm. It's a very different world. They didn't treat it the same way as they do now. I have a feeling like it's a different type of direction, and they were given a different time frame where they're just saying, "Do it, all right, good, go, just get it done quick as possible."
Yeah.
Now, the Metal Gear Solid 5 was an $80 million project. There are movies that came out. I saw The Green Inferno this past week, and that movie I think was $4 or $5 million budget. So you have video games not only costing more than some movies now, they're actually making more than movies. The video game industry now is, I've seen different projections, either double or triple the amount of money that Hollywood movies make. Video games actually make that. Now I think consoles go into that as well, but you have a considerable push for video games in regards to how much money they're making now, and the voice actors aren't getting into that cut.
Yeah,
not the way they'd like, at least.
Yeah, and Nolan North was actually in an interview last week where he was talking about the way that voice acting has developed since it started. Because at the very beginning it was, oh hey, I'm doing this thing, and here's your line. Yeah. But then on Uncharted 2, he was sitting in a capture booth with the lady playing Elena and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if you remember this part, but in Uncharted 2, at one point he jumps into a pool, and he goes, hey, watch it, Marco. And she goes, really? No, come on, no. Marco. Yeah, that part was ad-libbed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because they have several different ways of doing this, where they might send you a list of things and be like, okay, I need hurt, really hurt, and we just amputated your leg. Give me those 3 sounds. Yeah. And then they also have the type where they come in and they actually watch gameplay, and then they layer the audio over that, and he reacts as that happens, and they'll change the animation, and so it's a much more integral part of the whole thing. Yeah. But it's not just the money. Like one of the key things that they're really looking for is minimizing the length, or not minimizing, but decreasing the length of strenuous voice sessions.
Yeah.
And because, if you're sitting there, screaming for, 2-3 hours.
And actually screaming, not like indoor voice screaming, but outdoor voice.
Right, because I'm not.
We're not going to do that here, yeah.
No, I'm not a professional. No. But yeah, that's something that they're dealing with. And then one of the other elements, and this is something that I'm working on recording a couple of audiobooks right now. And I can only do, that's conversational, slowly talking, but by putting the emotion into the voice, the emphasis on the lines, that is a draining thing, like way more than I thought it would be. And
that's not even getting into the character voice stuff where you're doing more of the grading stuff, which is one reason why Trey Parker from South Park changed Cartman's voice, because it bothered him so much to do Cartman's voice. Yeah. So now he does it in a different way that's easier for him to do. Any of the really gravelly stuff or the weird character stuff. I don't know how Hamill does Joker for the length that he does.
No
I don't
idea.
know if
he's just incredible.
Because that hurts. That's a lot of pressure that gets on the vocal cords. There's a thing with Billy West recently. He was talking about he did, because he's done everything, but he did one version of Popeye, and he said it was the most horrible experience of his life. So basically doing something like that for 6 or 8 hours, even if you get little breaks in there, it just really takes a toll on your vocal cords, and having to do that multiple days, or for a movie we're talking about probably a couple weeks of knocking out lines like that. And maybe one reason why Robin Williams dubbed in a lot of his lines from the Popeye movie. Yeah. But it's something they need to get recognition for, especially with all the motion capture that's going on, with everything that Troy Baker's been doing, which reminds me a lot of Andy Serkis and what he did with Lord of the Rings, which was supposed to be a 3-week job, and the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy was supposed to be a 3 or 4 week job of just voice acting for him, and that took up I think 4 or 5 years of his life. Yeah.
And there's also a lot of secrecy around games, and so like sometimes and one of the other clauses that they're trying to get in, it's not like at the top of their priority list or anything, but one of the things that they're trying to get in is they want to know what project they're working on, because they feel that it affects their performance. And like if you just get a list of soldier, scene, whatever, and you get these like 5-6 word descriptions of the thing you want to do, it's more difficult to put into action the emotion and the gut and get the best performance that you can. And part of the reason that they do that is they don't want secrets to get out or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, penalize us if we drop secrets, but give us what we need to do our jobs.
Non-disclosure agreements exist for a reason.
Yeah, and honestly, there's a lot of stuff in there that I've read over a considerable amount of what's going on. If you're interested, I would suggest looking up. Will Wheaton wrote a piece on it, and it was 4 or 5 pages on describing how the process works, and it was a really interesting look into how it's made, how it's done, and the different ways and different styles that are possible, and what they're looking for. Yeah. So it is a significant issue, and I think it's one that I don't typically side with. Like unions are not really as nearly as necessary as they used to be. Yeah. But in this case, I feel like the industry as a whole will be better if they're able to get their demands. And obviously we hope that, that people are taken care of, that, there's not games that end up getting delayed until, a year from now because nobody would talk to us.
Yeah, your product is going to be better, and the people who are making that product, who we're really tapped into. So people like Nolan North and Tara Strong and those kind of people can continue to do things that we really like doing, and not either not want to do them or be in a position where it hurts their vocal cords, so they can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
There are risks involved. But speaking of the whole story aspect, that kind of leads me into one of the other bits of news, which is that Call of Duty Black Ops 3 will have no campaign on PS3 and Xbox 360.
Yes, and they said that was due to the fact that the campaign is going to be co-op, which is actually kind of cool to me because I like co-op.
If it's couch co-op, that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
yeah.
And so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is just another indication that the studios are moving on and just letting go of the last generation in a very slow and gradual process.
Very slow. I know I mentioned it before, but this is the longest we've ever seen them hang on to the previous generation and still release the games that are coming out in the next generation consoles, the current generation consoles. On the previous generation, usually you get either a very tamed down version, like very, very, very tamed down version, or you get a completely different game. Your Madden 2016, I guess it is. I don't remember so the new Madden came out, and it's a full game on the 360 as well as the Xbox One and the PS4. And why? Well, I know people still have the consoles, but what you're doing is a disservice to this current generation and what this current generation can do.
Yeah.
Anytime you're shooting for the lowest common denominator and then adding a little bit to it.
Yeah.
Unless you make a completely different game. When you make a completely different game, then you can let the PS4 and Xbox One shine, or even PC at that point if you have a PC port. But any of the games that are coming out on 360 and PS3, it costs them considerably more to make two different versions. So they make one version and they make the resolution a little bit bigger over here. They make the facial animation just a little bit better over here.
And particularly with the sports ball games, they have such a short turnover rate.
They really do.
And so because by the time the game is out, they have probably about 9 months to get it done, and then send it off to Q&A. And so there's already considerable limits on what they can do from one game to the next. Yeah. But
the secret is they keep adding to the previous game.
Yeah.
And they don't tell you that they're doing that, but that's what they're doing. The engine's the exact same thing.
And occasionally when they do a considerable transition, the first one's usually a wreck.
Yeah.
But by limiting themselves to what can be done on the previous campaign versus the new campaign, it might make financial sense, and that's one of the things.
Yeah.
It is a business; they have to make money and all that.
And it is going to be cheaper. It's going to be $50 instead of $60 on Xbox 360 and PS3. So if all you care about is multiplayer, all you care about is online multiplayer, and you don't care about the graphics that much, then you could pick that up for $10 less. But the interesting thing to me is that so they're saying, it's no campaign. Will that matter for this type of game? Will it matter for this franchise? The last Call of Duty game that I played was Black Ops 2, and I beat the story in an evening. I think it was 5 hours.
Nice.
I beat it, and then I said, okay, now what? And I played a little multiplayer, and I got it handed to me left and right, which wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun experience. I've played it now. If you're with a group, to me that's different. If you're hanging out with your buddies, I was just getting random pairings, and I don't think that the campaign matters as much for this franchise, which makes me even more so say why, unless, fingers crossed, the campaign in the new game is going to be at least 10 or 12 hours. Give me a 12-hour campaign.
That would be awesome. I would be interested in that.
Then I get a couple days. If it's couch co-op, that's fantastic as well. My wife plays games with me, and having someone there experiencing the game with you is completely different than being online. I think that's getting missed a lot in our culture right now. Yeah. Having friends over and experiencing a game together. There's a beautiful experience in that, and I hope that it has that.
Okay, here's one question. Yeah. One possibility that this brings up is so they're still releasing the games on older generations, and it doesn't have a campaign. It doesn't matter to a lot of people. Yeah. But what do you think about the idea that this is an indication that this is the last one that will also be released? What if next year's isn't released on 360 and PS3?
I hope so.
I think that would be interesting.
I hope so. I hope so, and I mean that in a nice way. The console generations happen for a reason. We have to progress past where we currently are in order to let the current generation of consoles really show what they can do. Mm-hmm. And we're 2 years in to this console generation, and we're still putting Metal Gear Solid 5 came out on Xbox 360 and PS3. You're putting these games on there on a previous generation, and they look great on the current generation of consoles, but you're taking extra time that could be developed and into optimizing and really making these new games shine. Yeah. And my guess, we had 8 years. Sorry, we had 10 years. We're currently 10 years into 360, so say 7 or 8 years of a console generation is about the average. So we're 2 years into, say, 8 years. We're a quarter of the way through this current generation's lifespan, and we're still giving life support to the previous generation. It needs to be cut off. I'm hoping it's kind of after Christmas. The next year is going to be all current generation. That way we can really see what these consoles can do. People are speculating on they're not powerful enough. They're not as powerful as PCs and everything. But when the PS3 and the Xbox 360 came out, the graphics were nowhere near as good as they got towards the end. People got to really optimize it and tweak it for those systems. Right,
because just the power alone is not. Yes, it does grant a considerable jump. Yeah. But even more so than that is the ability of the programmers. Yeah. And if you have this group of talented individuals mm-hmm. that are still programming for the old generation, like particularly with the PS3 because it has a different
cell processing. Yeah.
And so if you just allow everyone who's programming for consoles. Mm-hmm. All right, everybody work with this system, and you learn it, and I'm sure there are clever people working on the PS3 and 360 version.
They're going to stay
who are not able to bring their ideas to the forefront, and even if they have clever ideas, their usefulness will be limited.
It's also boring and stagnant to be in that position. Speaking as someone working in telecom, and any time that you are stuck working on a specific type of architecture and a new architecture comes out and you're not working on it, and then everyone else is working on it but you become antiquated along with the previous architecture. And if you're not given a chance to do that, or if you just get really comfortable doing what you were doing, it's a really bad thing for everybody. So the new architecture is more like a PC, which should be easier for people to adopt. But with all of that going on and the previous generation still being on life support, we had some recent news that Hitman was delayed until March. So Hitman, this is basically a reboot of the series from what I'm kind of getting at. Yeah. So they're kind of rebooting the series, which I thought was interesting because I don't know if this is done. I'm pretty sure it's done because they want to tweak the game. They want to make sure it's better. I find it funny that it's done right after the Hitman movie bombed.
Well, I think it. Okay, so this is actually a really interesting game mm-hmm. because what they've said they're going to do is you pay $60, you get this game, and then we will continue to support it and drop missions and assassinations and all these different kinds of things. I guess in this game, missions and assassinations are pretty much the same thing, but the idea is that they will give you new content as you come out. But initially, I think the number of missions that they were offering at launch was insufficient, and they realized that. Yeah. And so, it's cool to have new content however, but that's kind of how a lot of people remember Destiny. Because now, with the Taken King and these other various expansions, the Taken King in particular, it's this fully fleshed out world, this realized dream.
Yes.
And this is what it could have been at launch. And so a lot of people bought Destiny when it came out because it was this really, really big thing and really hyped up. Yeah. And there were a lot of really neat ideas, but it didn't really come to fruition until later. Yeah. And I think that they're concerned that if they release Hitman with not enough content, people will get in and be like, oh, that's it?
Yeah.
And then move on to something else.
Which is what I did with Destiny about a month or month and a half in, when I realized, and World of Warcraft is a grind fest, and there are a lot of games that are grind fest, but Destiny basically has 12 missions. It's Destiny, vanilla Destiny, if you want to call it that, the very first, when it very first came out. There were 12 missions, and then 3 or 4 strikes. And you played those missions, and then when you got higher level, you played those missions on a higher difficulty. Mm-hmm. And then when you got higher level than that, you played those missions on an even higher difficulty. Until you got to the point where then you could do the higher end strikes and your daily quests and your weeklies. You grind out specific the coins and everything to buy, which the rate that I was playing, I could buy an item from the vendor with the coins every other week or so, maybe every 3 weeks. So I was putting in a ton of time, doing strikes, doing the exact strikes that I needed to do for that week. And it just got repetitive. I was playing the exact same strikes over and over and over again. And people were doing this. People are still, well, now that we have DLC, it's not as bad, but people did that until the first DLC came out. Mm-hmm. And then you had 4 more levels and then 2 more strikes. So you have 6 more things.
And Xbox was actually missing one of the...
One of the strikes, yeah. So you have the Taken King. The Taken King and everything that's in there now is how Destiny should have launched. That is exactly how it should have launched. And this is why when I hear about a game being delayed, I am completely okay with that. If it needs to be delayed longer for me to get a better product, delay it. Because that first impression when I play whatever game it is, that really, there's so many games that are coming out. You have to win in that first impression. You have to really just knock it out of the park and get me hooked. Otherwise, it just sits on my shelf. If I want to collect it, it'll sit on my shelf, and if not, then I'm selling it. I'm giving it away. And Destiny, I kept because I was hopeful. And now we're at a point where it actually is what it should have been. Yeah. But that's how it should have been day one. That's how much story it should have been in day one, which still isn't very much story.
And one of the really fun things that I find interesting about the Taken King is that they're going to whenever you buy the expansion or the legendary thing, then they will let you jump up to where you can go ahead and start on the raids. Yeah, start with the good stuff. Yeah, and that's an interesting idea, but it is still
you're paying to win.
They're having to make up.
To me, you're paying to win. I'm sorry.
No, that for me that's something, because like I don't want to grind to get to the content that everybody's talking about, and so I don't want to have to spend 20 hours. I can't be sold on a game with, well, just grind the first 20 hours, and then after that, it gets so good.
Or if it's in World of Warcraft, it's grind the first 80 hours, and then it gets so good. Yeah,
but like the Taken King will bring you up to 26, and the level cap is 40, and that grants you access to the first raids, and the first part where it's more than just a shooty, don't die. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that's interesting.
It is. I don't know. There's a lot of I guess the way Destiny works, you could still be playing those earlier missions and still get the story even at that level, because you can play the missions on higher difficulty. I think that delaying games, one of the benefits to it, people get really upset about it, but one of the benefits is you have less of a fiasco. You have less of a fiasco like you had with the Master Chief Collection. Master Chief Collection, and even worse was Unity, Assassin's Creed Unity last year. Last year we had a ton of buggy games, and they were all games that were promised to be out at this time, and they needed to have it released at that time. And anytime you do that and you're too strict on that, you can run into this. You can run into a situation where it's just it's completely ridiculous. There's only certain people that in history of movies and games that can pull it off and do it right. And I think it sets a lot of people up for disaster. You have to let these things really come on their own. Mighty Number 9 was delayed as well. Again, if the product comes to us and it's great, I'm completely fine with it.
Yeah, and like one of the things that a lot of people don't remember is The Last of Us was actually scheduled a month before it ended up being released, and they got to the end. They said, okay, and I recall this being one of the most honest press releases I can remember. Druckmann and Straley came out and said, hey, we believe that we could ship this game as it is right now, and it would be a passable game. But we think we can do more.
Yeah.
And we think this extra month of polish, we feel like we can give a game that is so much more and so much better than we would be able to offer right now.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that was the defining game of the PlayStation 3. They were willing to delay it and say, look, we know that we said we would do this. We thought we could, maybe we can, but if you're willing to wait, we promise something better.
Yeah. And
that is a trade I will always take. But Mighty Number 9 is a different situation because I kickstarted that game. I don't back a whole lot of things. I've backed that and then the Castlevania one. But I'm getting my news from Kotaku, and then 3 days later I get an email from Inti Creates.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
No, it's not.
If you
should have gotten the email first as a backer.
Yeah, and then
get the email first, and Kotaku reports.
Kotaku reports on that email.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's news.
This is the official release that came to all the backers.
Right.
When you back a product like that, you're essentially
investing.
You're an investor. You're buying stock, if you will, in that game. You're purchasing. You're paying almost. You're prepaying partially, but you're also kind of adding a little bit. As an investment, because you want the product to be better, and as an investor, you need to have that news first.
Yeah,
not 3 days later.
And I'm willing to wait, and you put it out when it's ready.
Yeah,
I might complain a little bit. I have complained a little bit, but the more important thing to me is the communication, and they've done fine with that. And a lot of things this year I feel got delayed. Things that were supposed to be released fall this year, from Uncharted to others.
Yeah,
but
Fallout 4 is the only one that I'm waiting. I've been waiting for them to say, it's not ready. That thing was just announced so early.
Yeah, but they did say that by the time they announced it, the game was basically done.
Yeah,
and Bethesda has the ability. I don't know if they're a publicly traded company, but
I don't know.
But they have the ability and they have the trust of us that when they say, hey, our game will be coming out in 6-8 months.
It will.
And they have the ability to do that. Take-Two and Rockstar, like these are companies that have earned our trust, and they don't have to tease us 3 years out with whatever. And I know I talk a lot of really happy things about Ubisoft, but I feel like that they last year with Unity, and I haven't even talked to anybody who encountered those bugs.
I have,
but it was the perception and the idea of you released a broken game, and that's damaging to you, damaging to the industry, and so I'm really excited that the developers are willing to wait a little bit and give us a better product, because I will always be willing to wait. Yeah, like I said, I will and might complain, but that is the better solution than to release a game broken or incomplete and then say, no, just wait, it'll be fine later. Yeah,
exactly. So that's this week's news, kind of wrapped up. One of the things we wanted to start adding in here is viewer mail. So if you guys have questions for us, anything that you want our opinions on, send us a direct message on YouTube or Facebook. You can put comments in there as well, but we really want to answer the ones that are direct messages. That way it kind of stays a secret, and we don't feel like we have to answer it until the actual show.
Or you can send us an email.
Send us an email as well.
thisweekinourcollectiveheads@gmail.com. And we will get it and read it. And right now, it's a pretty good chance your question will be answered.
It'll probably be you. Yeah. It'll probably be you. We'll keep doing this every week. Send us in your questions. If you want to hear our opinions on something, or if you something that you want us to review on there, we can do that as well. But for this,
if you don't want to research something and you're like, hey, there's this thing, you find out.
Yeah, it'll be a quick bit for these, but obviously also send in if you have any other suggestions, send them in as well. But any of the questions, we're going to do kind of a wrap up at the end of every news where we're going to do viewer mail. So send that in and help us continue to bring a better product to you guys. So that's it for this week in our Collective Heads news. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kevin.
Come
Find me at Sabal on Twitter.
Yeah, and come check us out on Facebook at Facebook/TWIOCH. We're TWIOCH everywhere except for Twitch, which I'm working on right now, but we're TWIOCH Gaming. I'm hoping we can see what we can do on that. But anyways, we'll see you guys later. Have a good one.
Show they had a new Wii game.
Why?
I don't know.
The Wii.
I don't know.